In moments of profound bewilderment, when the very fabric of one's understanding of the cosmos is challenged, Zarel, a Graylan exchange student built like a walking coat rack and possessing a constant air of surprise, found his worldview dramatically altered by a simple question. "Where's your hall pass?" the human teacher demanded. This inquiry struck Zarel with the force of a celestial impact. A hall pass? He pondered its nature. Could it be a concealed weapon? A personal identifier? Or perhaps a mystical object maintaining the delicate equilibrium of the school environment? None of these possibilities seemed outlandish, which only amplified Zarel's confusion. The teacher, Miss Grumple, whose frown could strip paint from wood, wasn't one to tolerate philosophical uncertainty as a valid excuse. "Fetch one from the office," she snapped, directing him towards the door. Thus, Zarel was thrust into the bewildering network of the human school's hallways, equipped with nothing but a burgeoning sense of apprehension and a notebook filled with amateur sketches of Earth's creatures. From the outside, the school had presented a facade of manageable size, even charming. Within, however, it revealed itself as a convoluted, illogical maze defying all sense of direction. Signs proclaiming North Wing adorned walls clearly oriented westward, while others pointed towards room 47C with arrows leading directly into solid brick. Rounding a corner, Zarel collided with a water fountain, its metallic surface reflecting his image like a disapproving automaton. He chose not to examine it further after witnessing a human student attempt to drink from it and nearly suffocate. Curious, yet alarming, Zarel muttered, documenting the incident in his notebook. 10 minutes into his exploration, Zarel stumbled upon what he suspected was the core of the school's spatial anomaly, a small, dimly illuminated closet stocked with cleaning supplies and unidentifiable bottles marked caution. A faint aroma of citrus and disappointment permeated the air. "Of course," Zarel declared, his voice reverberating through the confined space. "This must be a gateway. The hall pass, it's the key to prevent accidental transdimensional travel. How ingenious!" As he contemplated this supposed portal, the sound of approaching footsteps jolted him into action. Zarel dove behind a pile of paper towels, his limbs tangling like a marionette in a state of panic. Moments later, a figure materialized in the doorway, Franklay, the hall monitor. A slender boy with an air of exaggerated self-importance, Franklay wore a vibrant orange sash proclaiming his authority in bold letters, and his expression conveyed the impression that he'd been anticipating this precise moment his entire life. "You're not supposed to be here," he declared, his voice dripping with suspicion. Mistaking the sash for a military insignia, Zarel immediately saluted. "Commander, I apologize for my intrusion into your dimensional fortress. I am on a quest to obtain the hall pass." Franklay squinted. "What are you talking about? Stop saluting me, this isn't the army. You need a hall pass to be in this hallway." "Then it is as I feared," Zarel proclaimed gravely. "The hall pass, a tool of immense power. I must acquire it before the balance of this institution is disrupted. Guide me, Commander." "Are you messing with me?" Franklay inquired, though he appeared uncertain himself. Zarel interpreted the ensuing silence as agreement. "Excellent. Onward, then," he exclaimed, darting past Franklay down the nearest corridor. "Hey! You can't just," Franklay shouted, giving chase. But Zarel was too swift, or perhaps too unpredictable. His movements resembled a trapped bird, erratic and colliding with walls. Franklay abandoned the pursuit after Zarel vaulted over a recycling bin with an agility that defied both physics and reason. Zarel halted only upon encountering another door, which he opened cautiously, half expecting a gateway to an endless abyss. Instead, he discovered a vending machine, humming with a quiet menace. "Human sustenance generator," Zarel murmured in awe. He pressed a button labeled Trail Mix only to shriek in terror as the machine roared to life and dispensed a bag with an ominous thud. "This planet is sheer madness," he whispered, clutching the trail mix as if it might detonate. Zarel considered himself a reasonably intelligent Graylan, despite a prior incident involving a cargo hold mistaken for a meditation chamber and an accidental self-shipment to a mining colony. But Earth? Earth was an enigma shrouded in contradictions, sprinkled with chaos, and then vigorously shaken. From the outside, the school had seemed reasonably sized, almost quaint. Inside, it was a twisting, illogical labyrinth defying all reason. Wall signs proclaimed North Wing in areas clearly facing west, while others helpfully directed students to room 47C with arrows pointing directly into solid brick. Zarel rounded a corner and promptly walked into a water fountain. Its chrome surface reflected his image like a judgmental robot. He decided against further investigation after observing a human student nearly asphyxiate while attempting to drink from it. Intriguing, yet unsettling, Zarel murmured, diligently recording the observation in his notebook. After about 10 minutes of wandering, Zarel discovered what he suspected was the source of the school's spatial distortion, a small, dimly lit closet filled with mops, buckets, and unlabeled bottles marked with ominous warnings. The air held a faint scent of citrus and a palpable aura of disappointment. "Aha!" Zarel exclaimed, his voice echoing in the small space. "A portal! The hall pass, it's the key to preventing accidental interdimensional travel. Brilliant!" He was admiring this supposed portal when the sound of approaching footsteps startled him. Zarel dove behind a stack of paper towels, his limbs flailing in a panic tangle. A figure appeared in the doorway, Frankley, the hall monitor. Frankley was a thin boy who seemed to take his job far too seriously. He wore a bright orange sash proclaiming his authority in large letters, and his expression implied he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. "You're not allowed in here," Frankley stated, his voice dripping with suspicion. Zarel, mistaking the sash for a military badge, immediately saluted. "Commander! My apologies for entering your dimensional fortress. I am on a mission to acquire the hall pass." Frankley squinted. "What are you talking about?" "Stop saluting, this isn't the military. You need a hall pass to be in the hallway." "Then my suspicions are confirmed," Zarel declared gravely. "The hall pass is an instrument of immense power. I must obtain it before this institution's equilibrium is disrupted. Lead me, Commander." "Are you kidding me?" Frankley asked, although he sounded a little unsure himself. Zarel took the silence as confirmation. "Excellent. Let us proceed," he declared, dashing past Frankley down the closest hallway. "Hey! You can't just," Frankley yelled, chasing after him. But Zarel was too quick, or perhaps too unpredictable. He moved like a startled sparrow, erratic and bouncing off the walls. Frankley gave up after Zarel hurdled a recycling bin with a surprising display of athleticism that defied both logic and the laws of physics. Zarel stopped only when he came to another door. He opened it cautiously, half expecting a gateway to some infinite chasm. Instead, he found a vending machine, humming with a low, menacing thrum. "Human sustenance dispenser," Zarel murmured with a sense of awe. He pushed a button labeled Trail Mix, only to yelp in surprise when the machine whirred to life and dispensed a bag with a disconcerting thud. "This planet is utterly preposterous," he whispered, clutching the trail mix as if it were a live grenade. Zarel considered himself a fairly intelligent Greylan, even though he once mistook a spaceship's cargo bay for a meditation chamber and accidentally shipped himself to a distant mining colony. But Earth was a riddle wrapped in a paradox, sprinkled with chaos, and then shaken vigorously. After about 10 minutes of wandering, Zarel came across what he suspected was the epicenter of the school's spatial irregularities, a small, poorly lit supply closet stocked with cleaning equipment and unidentifiable containers marked caution. A subtle aroma of citrus and general despair hung in the air. "Eureka!" Zarel proclaimed, his voice bouncing off the close walls. "This must be an interdimensional gateway. The hall pass, it's the key. It prevents unintended dimensional shifts. How incredibly clever!" Lost in admiration of this supposed portal, Zarel was startled by the sound of approaching footsteps. He dove behind a stack of paper towels, his limbs getting tangled in a panicked flurry. A figure emerged in the doorway, Frankley, the hall monitor. A thin boy with an air of self-importance that seemed rather inflated, Franklay sported a bright orange sash with the word authority printed in large block letters. His expression implied that this was the moment he'd been born for. "You're not permitted in here," he stated, suspicion lacing his tone. Mistaking the sash for a military decoration, Zarel instantly snapped to attention and saluted. "Sir, I offer my apologies for this intrusion into your dimensional stronghold. I am engaged in a vital mission to secure the hall pass." Franklay squinted, a puzzled look on his face. "What are you even going on about? And quit saluting me, I'm not in the army. You're supposed to have a hall pass to be wandering around in the corridors." "So it's as I deduced," Zarel pronounced gravely. "The hall pass, an instrument of extraordinary potency. I must obtain it before it's too late and the harmony of this institution unravels. Show me the way, sir." "Are you pulling my leg?" Franklay asked, though he sounded a bit unsure himself. Zarel interpreted the silence that followed as confirmation. "Splendid. Let's proceed," he exclaimed, sprinting past Franklay down the nearest hallway. "Hey! Hold on. You can't just," Franklay shouted, taking off after him. However, Zarel was too nimble, or perhaps his movements were simply too unpredictable. He darted around like a bird trapped indoors, ricocheting off the walls in an erratic flight. Franklay abandoned the pursuit after Zarel cleared a recycling bin with an athleticism that seemed to defy both the laws of gravity and common sense. Zarel's frantic dash ended when he encountered another door, which he opened gingerly, anticipating a gateway to some unfathomable void. To his surprise, he found himself face to face with a vending machine, emitting a low, unsettling hum. "A human nourishment dispenser," Zarel muttered, impressed. He pressed a button labeled Trail Mix, and then jumped back with a startled cry as the machine whirred and dispensed a bag with a disconcerting thud. "This world is pure lunacy," he whispered, clutching the Trail Mix as if it were an explosive device. Zarel considered himself a fairly bright Greylan, despite one unfortunate incident involving a spacecraft storage compartment that he'd mistaken for a meditation pod, leading to his accidental delivery to a mining outpost. But Earth was a true enigma, a paradoxical puzzle coated in a thick layer of chaos and then shaken vigorously for good measure. Zarel, still clutching the Trail Mix like a ticking time bomb, considered himself a reasonably bright Greylan, even with the unfortunate cargo bay's meditation chamber mix-up that landed him in a mining colony. Yet Earth continued to confound him. It was a perplexing enigma wrapped in an intricate paradox, generously seasoned with chaos, and then shaken with extreme vigor. He found himself particularly intrigued by the role of the Hall Monitor, a perplexing hybrid of law enforcement officer and dungeon warden. This human functionary seemed specifically designed to generate fear and ensure obedience, a role that Franklay embraced with a dedication bordering on religious zeal. The Hall Monitor, Franklay, finally caught up with Zarel just as the alien stood transfixed before the imposing double doors marked cafeteria. From within, a cacophony of human voices erupted, sounding like a regiment preparing for a major offensive. Zarel hesitated, uncertain whether to enter. Was this the sacred chamber where the hall pass was kept? "There you are!" Franklay exclaimed breathlessly. "Do you have any idea the amount of trouble you're in?" Zarel turned, his large eyes wide. "Commander Franklay, you have arrived to assist me in my quest." Franklay blinked, thoroughly confused. "Quest? What on earth are you talking about? You're meant to be in class." "Ah, but my mission transcends such mundane matters. I seek the hall pass, an artifact of immense significance. I believe it lies beyond these gates," Zarel announced, gesturing dramatically toward the cafeteria doors. Franklay stared at him incredulously. "The hall pass is just a slip of paper that lets you be in the hallway. It's not some magic trinket." "Aha!" Zarel exclaimed, pointing a finger accusingly. "That's precisely what someone guarding such a potent object would say." "Well played, Commander Franklay, but I see through your clever deception." Franklay pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture Zarel had come to recognize as a sign of deep regret. "Listen," Franklay said, grinding his teeth, "the hall pass is at the office, that way." He pointed down an endlessly long corridor. Zarel tilted his head, his antennae twitching. And how do I know this isn't a cunning trap? It's not a trap. Franklay snapped. Ah, I see, Zarel said, nodding sagely. A double bluff. Before Franklay could retort, the cafeteria doors swung open, unleashing a wave of noise and pandemonium. Students surged out, balancing trays laden with strange and unidentifiable food items. Zarel pressed himself against the wall, his eyes darting between the humans and their trays. One student clutched a rectangular slab of something resembling molten rock, another balanced a bowl of writhing noodles that appeared to be animate. Are these warriors preparing for battle? Zarel whispered to Franklay. They're just getting lunch, Franklay mumbled, now massaging his temples. The term lunch was new to Zarel, but he deduced its meaning from the context. Humans consumed vast quantities of food before engaging in strenuous activity, clearly preparation for some sort of arduous trial, possibly even gladiatorial combat. I mustn't interfere with their rituals, Zarel declared. Let us proceed with caution, Commander. I am not your commander, Franklay growled. Undeterred, the alien saluted him again. Of course, your modesty is commendable. With Franklay reluctantly leading the way, the two ventured deeper into the labyrinthine corridors. Along the way, Zarel observed the human fondness for peculiar decorations. Posters proclaiming "Follow your dreams" were displayed beside others sternly warning no running. He made a mental note to inquire later why humans encouraged ambition while simultaneously forbidding rapid locomotion. As they neared a sign that read "Office," a new sound emerged, the sharp, rhythmic clang of a bell. Franklay froze. Oh, no, he whispered. What is it? Zarel asked, a note of concern in his voice. The late bell, Franklay breathed. If we're in the hallway after it rings, the teachers will start looking for us. Zarel's antennae perked up. So it begins. A stealth mission, Commander Franklay. I trust your instincts implicitly. Franklay groaned. This isn't a stealth mission, we're just, but Zarel was already in motion, crouching low and darting from locker to locker with the awkward grace of a malfunctioning cleaning robot. He gestured for Franklay to follow. Quickly, before the patrols arrive. What patrols? Franklay hissed, chasing after him. Clutching the trail mix as if it were a volatile explosive, Zarel reflected on his Greylan intellect, which, despite a past mishap involving a cargo bay mistaken for a meditation pod and a subsequent unintended journey to a mining outpost, he still considered reasonably sharp. However, Earth continued to baffle him. It was a paradox wrapped in an enigma, liberally seasoned with chaos, then given a vigorous shaking. He found the concept of the hall monitor particularly perplexing, a curious blend of law enforcement and prison guard. This human official seemed expressly designed to instill fear and demand obedience, a role that Franklay embodied with a seriousness that bordered on the spiritual. Franklay, the hall monitor, at last caught up with Zarel just as the alien stood mesmerized before the imposing double doors marked cafeteria. From within came a din of human voices, resembling a military unit preparing for a large-scale assault. Zarel hesitated, unsure whether to proceed. Could this be the hallowed chamber where the hall pass was housed? There you are! Franklay exclaimed, slightly out of breath. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? Zarel turned, his large eyes wide. Commander Franklay. Providence has brought you to aid me on my quest. Franklay blinked, utterly bewildered. Quest? What are you talking about? You're supposed to be in class. Ah, but my purpose transcends such ordinary matters. I seek the hall pass, an object of immense importance. I believe it resides beyond these gates, Zarel declared, gesturing dramatically towards the cafeteria doors. Franklay stared at him incredulously. The hall pass is just a slip of paper that allows you to be in the hallway. It's not some magical trinket. Aha! Zarel exclaimed, pointing a finger accusingly. That's precisely what someone guarding such a powerful item would say. A clever ruse, Commander Franklay, but I see through your deception. Frank Lay pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture Zarel had come to understand as an expression of profound exasperation. "Look," Frank Lay said, clenching his jaw, "the hall pass is in the office, that way." He pointed down a seemingly endless hallway. Zarel cocked his head, his antennae twitching. "And how can I be certain this isn't some elaborate trap?" "It's not a trap," Frank Lay snapped. "Ah, I see," Zarel said, nodding knowingly. "A double bluff." Before Frank Lay could reply, the cafeteria doors swung open, releasing a torrent of noise and commotion. Students poured out, carrying trays piled high with peculiar and unidentifiable food items. Zarel flattened himself against the wall, his eyes darting back and forth between the humans and their trays. One student clutched a rectangular slab of something that resembled solidified lava, another balanced a bowl of noodles that appeared to be wriggling. "Are these warriors preparing for combat?" Zarel whispered to Frank Lay. "They're just getting lunch," Frank Lay mumbled, now rubbing his temples. The term lunch was new to Zarel, but he inferred its meaning from the situation. Humans consumed substantial amounts of food before engaging in strenuous activities, clearly in preparation for some sort of challenging ordeal, perhaps even a gladiatorial contest. "I must not interfere with their customs," Zarel announced. "We shall proceed with caution, Commander." "I'm not your commander," Frank Lay growled. Undeterred, the alien saluted him again. "Naturally, your humility is admirable." With Frank Lay grudgingly leading the way, the pair ventured further into the maze-like corridors. As they walked, Zarel observed the human affinity for unusual adornments. Posters proclaiming "Follow your dreams" were displayed alongside others sternly warning no running. He made a mental note to inquire later as to why humans encouraged ambition yet simultaneously prohibited rapid movement. As they neared a sign-marked office, a new sound arose, the shrill, rhythmic clang of a bell. Frank Lay froze. "Oh, no," he muttered under his breath. "What is it?" Zarel asked, a hint of worry in his voice. "The tardy bell," Frank Lay whispered. "If we're caught in the hallway after it rings, the teachers will be looking for us." Zarel's antennae twitched excitedly. "So it commences." "A clandestine operation, Commander Frank Lay." "I place my full trust in your judgment." Frank Lay groaned. "This isn't a clandestine operation, we're just," but Zarel was already on the move, crouching low and darting from locker to locker with the ungainly grace of a malfunctioning robotic vacuum cleaner. He gestured for Frank Lay to follow. "Quickly, before the security forces arrive." "What security forces?" Frank Lay hissed, hurrying after him. Frank Lay, now visibly exasperated, stood in the middle of the hallway with his arms crossed. "You don't have to whisper, there's nobody around." "Precisely," Zarel countered in a conspiratorial hiss. "Which means they're hiding. We must remain vigilant." Before Frank Lay could retort, Zarel leaped towards the next trash can, colliding with it loudly and scattering its contents across the floor. He froze for a moment, then offered a sheepish thumbs up. "All part of the plan." "No, it's not," Frank Lay snapped, rushing over to right the overturned trash can. "You're going to get us caught." "Caught by whom?" Zarel inquired, peering around the corner with exaggerated caution. "Surely not the patrols of this primitive fortress?" Frank Lay sighed deeply. "It's a school, not a fortress, and there are no patrols." But Zarel wasn't paying attention. His focus had shifted to a row of lockers. "Commander, observe these metallic sentinels. Do they serve as barriers to protect the hall pass from intruders?" "They're just lockers," Frank Lay explained patiently. "They hold books and gym shoes, and stuff." Zarel narrowed his eyes. "So you claim. Yet I sense an air of secrecy." He began poking at the lockers, his long fingers pressing random combinations on the locks. One locker suddenly sprang open, revealing a precariously balanced tower of textbooks, which promptly collapsed onto him. "The defenses are active!" Zarel shouted, flailing as he was buried under an avalanche of algebra and geography. "They're not defenses, you just, never mind," Frank Lay muttered, pulling Zarel out from the mess. Once freed, Zarel dusted himself off, looking unreasonably triumphant. A close call. But I have gathered critical intelligence. The hall pass must be guarded even more fiercely than I imagined. Franklin didn't have the energy to argue. Fine, whatever. Can we just go to the office already? Yes, Commander. Lead the way. Zarel declared, saluting with such enthusiasm that he accidentally slapped himself in the face. As they approached the office, the hallway seemed to stretch out endlessly, as if the school itself were testing their resolve. The muffled voices of teachers discussing something incomprehensible drifted through the air, adding a sense of foreboding. Zarel's pace slowed, his antennae twitching. Do you sense that? He whispered. What? Franklin whispered back, despite himself. Danger, Zarel said gravely. I smell imminent doom. You're probably smelling the cafeteria pizza, Franklin replied, but even he couldn't completely shake the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine. At the end of the hallway stood the office door, a simple, unassuming portal marked main office. To Zarel, it might as well have been the gates to a forbidden temple. I shall enter alone, Zarel announced. Like hell you will, Franklin shot back. Before they could argue further, the door creaked open and a teacher stepped out, holding a clipboard. Zarel panicked, grabbing Franklin and pulling him into a nearby classroom. Quiet! Zarel hissed, pressing himself against the wall. The Guardians are onto us. That's just Mrs. Glorf. She's not a Guardian, she's... Franklin stopped mid-sentence as Mrs. Glorf glanced in their direction. Are you two supposed to be in here? She called out, her tone suspicious. Zarel froze, his mind racing. This was clearly a critical moment. He had only seconds to act. With the dramatic flair of a seasoned thespian, he raised a hand and bellowed, "We were never here." Then he grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher, pressed the handle, and filled the air with a cloud of white foam. "What are you doing?" Franklin shouted, coughing as the foam engulfed them, creating a diversion. "Escape now, Commander!" Zarel yelled, bolting from the room in a blur of lanky limbs and flailing antennae. Mrs. Glorf stood frozen in shock, her clipboard now covered in foam. Franklin groaned. "I hate today." By the time he caught up to Zarel, the alien was crouched in front of yet another janitor's closet. "I found it!" Zarel whispered, his eyes gleaming. "The hall pass lies beyond this portal." "I'm certain of it." "It's a janitor's closet," Franklin groaned. "Exactly," Zarel replied, pushing the door open dramatically. Inside the janitor's closet, the air hung thick with the aroma of industrial-strength lemon cleaner and a palpable sense of weary resignation. The dim light barely illuminated the crammed space, filled with mops, buckets, and shelves overflowing with cleaning supplies. Zarel, however, saw not a mundane storage room, but a secret chamber safeguarding ancient human technology. His antennae vibrated with excitement. Franklin, standing in the doorway, felt his patience wearing thin. This isn't where the hall passes. It's a janitor's closet, for cleaning, you know. Zarel waved a dismissive hand. Ah, but what better camouflage for a dimensional rift? Humans are masters of deception. He picked up a mop, holding it reverently. Observe this implement, so primitive, yet so elegant. That's a mop, Franklin stated flatly. A mop that clearly doubles as a staff of intergalactic authority, Zarel countered, attempting to twirl it like a baton. The mop head promptly detached, spraying droplets of water across the closet. Ahem, clearly a defective prototype. Franklin smacked his forehead. You've officially lost it. Undeterred, Zarel began rummaging through the shelves, pulling out spray bottles and muttering to himself. He held up a container labeled degreaser. Fascinating. This vial must contain a powerful dissolving agent, used to disintegrate enemy forces, he declared. It's for cleaning ovens, Franklin replied, slumping against the doorframe in defeat. Ignoring him, Zarel grabbed another bottle, this one marked caution, do not mix with ammonia. This, naturally, only piqued his curiosity further. What's this, a warning label? Surely this substance must be dangerously potent. Don't even think about, Frank Lay began, but it was too late. Zarel, in his boundless curiosity, poured a small amount of the first liquid into a bucket and added the second. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a sinister hiss emerged, accompanied by a thin wisp of smoke. "By the stars!" Zarel shouted, leaping back as if the bucket might sprout legs and attack. "The humans have perfected weaponized chemistry." Frank Lay choked and stumbled backward. "It's just toxic fumes. Open a window before we suffocate." Realizing the potential danger, or at least acknowledging Frankly's alarmingly green complexion, Zarel scrambled for the door. They burst into the hallway, coughing, Zarel dramatically gasping, "Evacuate the area. The humans have unleashed chaos." "What in the world is going on here?" a voice boomed. Standing before them was Mr. Grubb, the school janitor, balding, bespectacled, and wielding a mop with the weary air of a man who'd seen far too many spilled milkshakes. Mr. Grubb surveyed the scene. Zarel straightened, offering a shaky salute. "Greetings, High Custodian. I deeply regret any dishonor I have brought upon your sacred enclave." Mr. Grubb blinked slowly. "What?" Frank Lay groaned, rubbing his temples. "He's an alien. He thinks your closet is a dimensional portal." Mr. Grubb adjusted his glasses, peering at Zarel. "An alien, who?" "Explains the antennae and the attempted self-poisoning with cleaning supplies." "Indeed, High Custodian. Your species' ingenuity is as baffling as it is inspiring," Zarel said, bowing deeply. "I need a vacation," Mr. Grubb muttered. Then, sighing, he waved them away with his mop. "Get out of here before I report you to the principal. And clean up that mess in the closet." As Mr. Grubb retreated back into his domain, Zarel turned to Frank Lay, his eyes wide with sudden understanding. "Commander, we were mistaken. The hall pass isn't hidden here. The human janitorial hierarchy is too sophisticated to permit such a security breach." "I've been trying to tell you that," Frank Lay snapped. "Then the true location must be," Zarel paused, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. "Even more heavily guarded. The stakes have risen, Commander." "I'm not your commander, and the stakes haven't risen. The only thing rising is my blood pressure," Frank Lay retorted. "Precisely the resolve I'd expect from a leader of your caliber," Zarel exclaimed, clapping Frank Lay on the back with enough force to make him stumble. "Let us continue our mission, undeterred by this temporary setback." As Zarel marched down the hallway, head held high, Frank Lay trailed behind, muttering to himself, "Why did I even bother chasing after him? I could be in class right now, learning math, or something boring, but normal."